Cool, awesome.
But I
So,
don't need to get into that now. And it's sort of a biggish thing that I sort of want to drop on the table
mhm.
and look at some point. But I'm excited about the Connor sense making stuff.
Well, that's the thing here with this ecosystem mapping stuff and the networks we're sort of weaving together is it's not really distinct chunks. The rapid sense making framework is almost deliberately or explicitly in this realm of potentially in this sort of pattern language play realm because it could be used for composing of patterns of almost like a generative sequence, and that's what the rapid sense making framework is sort of a way of sort of well, yeah, maybe in a code sense, but a way of putting these different modules for facilitation in a generative sequence so as to sort of compose patterns basically. So I think what you're saying definitely fits, and I think therefore we'll touch on that today. I'll just
Any documentation, any link that?
yeah, I'll share a link and then I'll go try and hunt down Connor, make sure he hasn't lost track of time or something. So yeah, feel free to sort of connect or spin up a metamap or do some other sort of agenda building if you feel. I'm going to be a little distracted for a minute though.
Well, I got my Xmind going. I was just getting that a little bit set up. I have basically one main map that I've been collecting these ecosystem mapping calls notes on mostly. I think there's some things that are only in notes. Hey, Christina. You know, like Connor. But yeah, anyway, so that's just what I'm doing on my end, just getting set up with my note taking.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'll start a meta map given that I've sort of at least on this call taken up that practice, and I'll share a link if anyone wants to hop on a map with me. But yeah, I'll also share the link to the GitHub repo that Connor has sort of done some sort of mind dump into with this rapid sense making framework stuff. So just 1 second and I'll have some links. But I guess for those who haven't met, I think most of the group here, other than Connor, sort of met each other. But maybe we could do a quick round for to get to know Connor before we dive into some work.
Sounds great.
Cool. Well, I'm here in Zurich, Switzerland. I can just jump in and say, Connor, I think I'm trying to remember if we met on any live calls, but I think we've exchanged a little bit around. And yeah, I'm a big fan of metamaps. Well, I haven't used it so much. A few times when I tried, then it got hung up, and I couldn't show it properly to a few people. But I'm excited at its possibilities. So I think you know that. Robert for sure knows that. I've been mind mapping for a long time, and I'm not sure what else I should cover because I'm kind of diving into a lot of things these days that all mashing up. One thing is pattern languages, and I'm kind of also just at the doorway of this wiki world, federated wiki, and seeing a lot of synergies around that. So maybe that's enough for me for now. Check.
Connor, I think we met briefly around some of the high-low things about 2-3 years ago, plus metamaps. I've been watching that for a couple of years. I'm on west coast of Canada, and my fetish is money, but my own money. I don't like the other stuff, community currencies. That's it.
Lauren, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Connor, it's so nice to meet you. It's nice to have you here. We've heard a lot about you, and we're really excited to have you on the Thursday call. This is my favorite call of the entire week. I love it a lot. So, and I run a call on Saturdays when we're hoping to add new times to that to make it more accessible to people on the West Coast, like Christina. And what we're doing on the Saturday calls is kind of designing a collective intelligence workflow, which is kind of vague, but
Cool.
you know, it's that's my 3-word assessment. It will take longer than that to fully explain it, but that's what we're doing over there.
Cool.
And it overlaps with a lot of people on this call. So yeah, so nice to have you here. Really
Awesome.
excited. Oh,
Rich.
and I just wanted to let everyone know, Oliver from MEMAX, he got a $200,000 grant. So that's really exciting news.
Oh, wow.
And so how this affects you, Connor, you need to pay attention because Oliver is designing something called StoreX, and kind of like a collaborative tagging software.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that he's building it is that you can build different kind of visualizations and kind of like stick them in so that however people are, you know, collaborating, tagging the information, you can then plug in a visualization on that. So it's actually very relevant to what you're doing.
Yeah, even Robert had introduced me to his work a bit.
Rich, can you hear us? Hello?
Yes, I can. Hey.
You want to do a quick intro? I just put in the links so you have Connor's going to talk about the rapid sense-making framework and more, and Robert is mapping on the metamaps. That's the first link there.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm a new person to Kumu and systems mapping, and Christina brought me on board in the last couple months, got me hooked, and I'm just trying to absorb it all and see how I can apply it to my current job context, which is a manufacturing company out of Denver.
Awesome. And Connor and I got to meet briefly at the Whirlwind of the Decentralized Web Conference. And I'm really curious about using the rapid sense-making framework in conjunction with a strategic system map for decision-making. So I'm kind of looking at it as like, where do you stop doing one and start doing the other? How do they interface? That sort of thing. So I'm very curious about that.
Well, I guess I can go now that sort of we have new people that even I don't know yet. So that's interesting. I would say in terms of mapping, I've been working with Connor on actually, I'll do some sharing today on an open source project called Metamaps. It's kind of had off and on attention. Right now, I'd say the attention's in off mode for a little while, although we're seeding other projects, as you'll see soon. This rapid sense-making framework is actually something that sort of came out of some prior work and prototyping around sort of mapping conversations in a graph visualized sort of way on metamaps and sort of automatic layouts of the nodes on the map and how you might create graph layout algorithms that facilitate an emergent sort of conversation online. And then, yeah, and I'll just screen share here for a quick second so you can get a sense of metamaps if you've never seen it. I've started a map here just with some of the concepts that we've sort of brought into the space so far. So for those of you who sort of missed Charles's check-in, he had mentioned sort of pattern language. He's working with a group that's working on what's called the Wise Democracy pattern language. And Federated Wiki is sort of related. It's sort of a tool for doing pattern language design and kind of development. And I wanted to put in the center there the rapid sense-making framework because and generative sequences because basically in this pattern language sense, if you get sort of a generative sequence right, it'll almost be sort of magical, and that's kind of the sense, or sort of where I have the sense we're wanting to go with the rapid sense making framework. It's like, what are facilitation techniques that you might do sort of one after the other, and even on a data flow way, have data flow from like one step in the sequence to the other. But anyways, I'm already sort of barging in on what we're having Connor here to talk about. So
can you just quickly say how to add a node on metamaps?
Oh yeah, if you're wanting to play here, you just basically double click anywhere, and a little input box will pop up, and you can just type in what you want to share, and then you can also draw connections between existing nodes by, well, if you're on Windows, you can right click and drag. Otherwise, you can hold Alt or Option, I think, and just do a normal drag.
Same thing with Mac. You can hold 2 fingers, which is like a right click, and then drag.
Yeah. So I will stop screen sharing for now and sort of see who else is here, because I think somebody else joined, or I guess Mariette joined.
Hi, Mariette.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey there.
Can somebody repost that? Or I go back there. I already have it copied. Here's the links. Connor, have you met Mariette before?
No.
Oh, do a quick intro. Mariette and Connor was just going to dive into this.
Hi, Connor. Let's see. I'm a writer and producer with Just One Organics. Been working on and off in this call for about a year, I almost say, a little less, like probably like 7 months.
I work with Just One Organics too.
I had a feeling you did. So I was just with Fernanda and David over at Transform in San Francisco.
Cool.
And had a really great opportunity to dive deeper into our work with the Commons engine too. So that was really neat. So it's great to meet you.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, that's everyone. I'm Connor. I'm really glad to be here too. I'm also feeling happy that I'm feeling better today at all, because the last 2 days I wasn't feeling very good. Yeah, it's cool. I hear about this call. Many of these calls kind of all the time with Robert. I check in regularly with Robert. Work closely together on lots of different kinds of things and explorations. Yeah, I'm working at the moment full time with the company Hollow and on Holochain, building like P2P software. And I've been a developer, but also like I do documentation, and right now my role is in quality assurance, which is like testing. So I kind of do lots of different technical roles in writing. And but yeah, where I'm excited about the 2 categories that really capture my interests are really peer-to-peer and like collective intelligence and sense making. Holochain weighs in pretty deeply on the peer-to-peer side, and but I'm always kind of drawn back to and ultimately desiring to focus on the collective intelligence threads around collective intelligence and sense making. Robert kind of pointed at this sort of evolution from working on metamaps for like 5 years, from around 2012 to 2017 in like pretty focused ways on and off. And then it kind of shifted and introduced these different aspects to like, if you've got a graph visualization capability, how can you also bring the inputs into those maps from different sources? So things like mobile apps, or the one that everybody was getting really into at the time was Slack, and so we did something with. We started exploring how we could integrate metamaps with Slack, and that was pretty fruitful. And we prototyped something that we called the metamapper, which was this bot that let you basically add have sort of a chat-based interface into metamaps. You could create topics and create maps and explore maps, the list, the contents of them, and stuff like that. But ultimately, we went a step kind of deeper or beyond that, and started exploring outside of metamaps itself, what other kinds of, how we could do richer things with the chat-based interaction. And we worked with the University of Technology, Sydney, who gave us a little bit of grant funding to explore how you could actually sort of like facilitate a workshop via chat. Now, the idea is you're still actually in a physical room with people, but everyone has access to the same shared virtual session within a shared chat space. So like Mattermost or Slack. And the facilitator can kind of control the session a little bit, create prompts and that kind of thing. People respond to prompts and in their chats, and thus you're aggregating all the inputs digitally. So this was the sort of initial thing that then really led me forward towards the rapid sensemaking framework, which is kind of it's the generalization of that idea even further. So I'll start demoing and get into what I mean. So just a second.
Before you dive in, I just have a metamaps question. Because I don't find the interface incredibly intuitive. So I haven't used it, but I love watching Robert use it. I've used it a tiny bit, but I haven't used it as a knowledge store. And I always wonder, how do you actually use it over time? How do you use it? It's one thing to map a conversation. It's another thing to pull some action item or way forward or next topic or something out of that, and then connect connect maps to each other, or even better, connect the summary of a map to the summary of another, so that you could actually have these rich conversations and then bring people who were not there more into that sense-making plateau that was created by the conversations.
Yeah, I don't think Metamaps does a very good job of that at all. And I think it was something that we knew about. We had an idea for a feature that we called stories, which was a way of summarizing what shows up on a map. But that never got built, and other platforms we've seen have done really good jobs of that, like Kumu and Graph Commons and stuff. They do a good job of that, but no, it's not really built into Metamaps in a way that makes it easy. It's sort of it's difficult to look at a map that someone else made and actually get into the meaning that they made while they were making it, or the flow, or the so
yeah.
I wonder if something is related, this might be related to the community aspect. So maybe that could be based on tags or other keywords in the names of the maps, or even in the content of the maps, that through searching, then the maps that would be public would come up, and there would be kind of community network aspect. How to what extent did that happen?
Oh, sorry. Anyways, I'll let Connor answer, because I was distracted while I heard the question, so I don't actually know the question.
Yeah, it feels a bit in the weeds as a topic. If you don't mind, if we can kind of come back to, because we can go pretty far into metamaps in any direction. But oftentimes I'll at least for me personally, I'll end up focusing on what's not there, because there's a lot that's not there. It does have, some great ideas there, but also it's missing a lot in terms of what you really need.
Yeah, but actually that was how I was going to jump in as well, but I didn't hear the question. But one thing I wanted to point out that sort of links Christina's question here is, in some sense, I think the rapid sense-making framework, or what we're pointing at, can be seen as like a loosely coupled system, and that you can sort of put data into one sort of component of a loosely coupled system and then export that data maybe in JSON or something else, and sort of plug it in to the next component in sort of this generative sequence that I described earlier. So MetaMaps is able to export data. So it's totally possible, and I've done it before, where you just sort of bring the data in just so as to sort of make some sense of some things, and then export the data out and maybe bring it into Kumu or bring it into another component in your loosely coupled system. Yeah.
Yes, to JSON.
Just as JSON. Cool. So, I guess maybe I'll start. I think I'll start with the. I'll start by sharing my screen with the overview of. So the Rapid Sensemaking framework is designed for cross-platform, cross-protocol social processes of ideation and deliberation. Design a process, run a process, harvest information from a process. So the idea is to develop a set of modules which represent different social processes that we're all pretty maybe familiar with from kind of just real world interaction with people. That's like brainstorming. That's also evaluating ideas or reacting to ideas. So that could be through voting or different types of things like that. Then there's also types of processes that are really convergent ones. Basically, they could be considered decision-making processes, but they don't just have to be decision-making. They can just be filtering. So you go from a list of 100 ideas down to a list of 10 ideas that you like and prefer, and so then you've got a much shorter list than you started with, and that's kind of you're choosing between things and filtering out information instead of generating new information. So basically, these divergent processes of social information making, and then also these convergent processes. And I listed a bunch of platforms that kind of all relate to and inspire me in terms of the rapid sense-making framework. Things like GroupMap and Polis and Kialo, these kinds of idea engines, everything about thinking better together, understanding your organizations, understanding what people think, how they feel. And then Kialo is like even a little bit more of a structured sense making, collecting the pros and cons related to a particular issue. All of these kind of structured sense making tools. Also, we saw in a Twitter thread an exciting thing about Lumio, that Lumio is going to be coming out with some custom process templates, and that actually really relates to what the rapid sense-making framework is.
We're excited about that too.
Mm-hmm, yeah, that's really cool to hear that they're working on that. I think they themselves are steering the platform towards something that really just drives collective intelligence in a general way, rather than focusing on kind of old ideas around decision making. Okay, so there's two core aspects to the idea of the rapid sense making framework. One is that process designers can draw from a whole selection of modules and feed those different modules into one another in any particular sequence that they want. So as long as it's a valid sequence. So for example, you could generate a whole bunch of ideas, then you can, you might want to take out all of the duplicate ideas. Let's say that you are collecting like 100 ideas from 20 people, and maybe there's some duplicates. So before you go any further, you want to deduplicate those ideas. So it's helpful to have that deduplication step. And then third of all, you want to get a ranked or dot voted list of all those ideas. Some type of polling on those ideas to get a sense of the prioritization or relevance of those things. So the ultimate goal, and this isn't where I've started because I'm just at a point where I've created a sort of proof of concept. But the ultimate goal would be to have actually a graphical user interface that a process designer person could interact with, and they could pick from these different modules or templates, put those templates together, or put those modules together, and then kick off their process. This talks here about having a kind of a live dashboard while a process is going on, a sort of statistics, say like how many people are participating in your process, how many ideas have been generated, how many ideas have been filtered out or deduplicated, and how many ideas have currently been selected from that broad set, or something like that. And then finally, you get those results, and those results are either just the most basic thing is that they could just be saved as JSON to your computer, just a blob of data. But otherwise, you could also ping them via an API to a spreadsheet or something along those lines. So, or to a database. But yeah, that's the goal. But right now, you in my proof of concept phase, you have to actually just write these sequences of modules by hand, and that's how I'm going to show you. I'm going to do my little demo, and you'll see that. And who is in the what is it? Robert, is the open learning thing, is it integrated into the?
It's the same server as it's the same server as the Digital Life Collective. So
okay, so is everyone here on the Digital Life Collective server, or Mattermost server, or not?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mostar. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, because some of you, if you want to, you can actually participate in the little process that we're going to run.
Do you need a new channel, Connor? Because technically there's a Mattermost channel dedicated for these calls in the Open Learning Commons called the Ecosystem Mapping.
There's no need for a channel, no.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So, I missed the second core idea, which is that that's the idea of being cross-platform, cross-protocol. So this is actually probably the most important idea, because any one of these platforms that I listed, one of the sort of key caveats, I would say, to these platforms is that they assume people's willingness to kind of sign up to and go to some central platform, custom platform in which to interact with. But as we know, there's kind of a sense of like tool fatigue and stuff like that, and also lack of familiarity with these different things. And because I was thinking of something that all of these processes that I'm imagining, they can be facilitated fundamentally over chat. So all of the interaction, it's like a chat-based UI. So all of the interaction happens over chat, and what that means in terms of the possibilities that affords is that that someone could be interacted with on any chat platform of their preference that they're already on. So if someone uses Telegram or Facebook Messenger or Mattermost or text message, or the list goes on, it's really, really long, then they could interact with this process, which is being facilitated via whichever one that they are on, and everyone can participate in the process from their own tool of choice. So this means that you can potentially reach a much wider audience and without any sort of onboarding into a new tool, which I think is probably the biggest, most breakthrough aspect of it.
So Connor, now that we have Jerry Michalski here, is what you're saying we could import his brain as a module?
I don't know. Can you chat with it?
Not so well. I'm not sure it even has an API anymore. It's a proprietary piece of software, but
you can export it as a JSON, though, right?
Yes, that's sort of half done at this point, I think.
Oh, wow. Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Cool.
Glad to be here listening to this.
So let's run a little process and kick off a process, and I'll make this all a lot more concrete. So right now, there's a web page that I'm going to send you a link to, because it's how you're going to join and sign up as a participant in the process. Now this will be I'm sure that we'll learn some things through doing this with all of you, because I haven't done something with quite this many people, or even just a few people. So we'll probably see some things I haven't seen before, but we're going to try. So I'm going to show you on my screen that I have something called the RSF runner, and RSF is just for Rapid Sensemaking Framework. And the RSF runner is this thing which is capable of running these sequences, which are when you stitch together multiple modules. So, so my sequence is very simple right now. It just has pretty much 2 steps. The middle one is just a bit irrelevant. The first one is collecting participants. So I'm going to run a process via which I don't know who the participants are going to be, but I set the conditions for participation, such as the max number of participants, as well as how long to wait for participants to sign up. And then third, it's going to gather input from all the people who are participating based on a prompt. And that's my sequence. So I'm gonna leave that to the side and focus on. So I have this tool which is capable of running that sequence. Maybe I'm going to give it a little bit more time than what. Oh no, that's 3 minutes. That should be good. Okay, so once I've started this, now this page should be live, and I'm going to send it to you as a link, and you're going to go to it if you want to join. There's the chat. Okay, so if you're on, in particular, you have to be on the chat.diglife.coop server, and you have to find your username because you're going to need it to register. So the contact, there's multiple contact types, but you switch to Mattermost, and it provide your username and also the chat server URL.
Do we need to put in the that it's in open learning, or just chat.diglife?
No, just chat.diglife.coop. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to click participate, and it says you were successfully registered.
Worked for me too.
Mm-hmm. So we've got it. So what it's going to be doing is it's going to run for 3 minutes. Yeah, Christina, Jerry, awesome. Your username is this piece right here in the Mattermost server. It's the @ part.
But don't include the @ sign, right?
No, don't include the @ sign, right. Okay, so it's just moved on. So 3 minutes have passed. So I see Mariette, Love Evolve, Jerry, Robert, MWL, Christina.
Where are we? We're in open learning, and then which channel?
You should receive a direct message.
Oh, okay,
actually.
yes.
Who's just received a direct message?
I just did, yeah.
Yeah.
Have to find that.
Okay, so, right, so
Yep.
We've got 2 minutes, and the question is, what kinds of organizations have you participated in? So this can just be, this is just kind of an exploration of organizational forms, which is something we're all kind of talking about lately.
Do we comma separate, or do we do?
No, one. That's an interesting question. No, one per message. That has to be clarified. Thanks. So I'm not sure if absolutely everyone got in. So if you're watching my screen, you can see in the screen share, you can see what's going on. What's happened is that Metamapper has reached out to me and the other people who registered for the process with their Mattermost usernames. And we've just reached the max time, and it's completed the process. And I'll bring this back over here. This is just on my computer right now, but I'll share this out with the whole group. This is the complete, well, I'll show it a different way. This is, I can put it somewhere. Even here. No. Here we go. This is the data set that we got back from everyone's participation in the rapid sense-making process. So the question was, what kinds of organizations have you participated in? And we've got open, cooperatives, startups, conference organizing team, nonprofits, hierarchical, teal, corporation, radio station, mechanical, dojos, arts and education, nonprofit, 501c3, sole proprietorship, cooperative, local government, government agencies, Varian, Swiss Association, deliberately developmental, cooperative, Open Valley Network, collectives, team networks, consumer co-ops, Open Valley Network, open money development, startups. That's really cool. So you can, it's interesting. We're talking about like deduplication because obviously there's a bunch of duplicates in here too. So we can imagine creating a next step in the sequence that would be about deduplication, and it would reach out to everyone and also ask them basically one by one, are these two things duplicates? And we would collectively work together to deduplicate everything from the list. So there's also, I didn't get to show you this one, but there's one that I've developed already, which is basically you select between multiple options. So you give like a list. It's basically like a response or a vote. This one's called response for each, which is when you have like a list of things and you say what your response is based on a predetermined set of responses. So like it could be that you have a list of statements and everyone has to agree, disagree, or pass for each, or you can configure that however you want. And then also because myself, Robert also, were really interested in what you can do with pairwise comparison. We have a pairwise comparison module too. So, and these are really small and easy to develop. They don't take long, and especially it's getting shorter as I've developed a few of them. So yeah, I'll stop sharing there and then we can just talk. Thanks for playing.
Very cool.
Can you define the question at the beginning?
Which question?
Well, you asked what kind of organizations have you participated in? Is that something that is built in as one option, or is that something that you defined just at the beginning, kind of on the fly here?
I defined that question. It was encoded into my sequence that I had prepared for this particular demo. I have it hard coded as my prompt for the collect responses module.
So Rich, Jerry, and Robert, especially in terms of system mapping, you could dive into nodes with the group asynchronously here and say name 10 things that I guess it would have to be synchronous, but through chat it would be quick. Name 10 things that increase this, name 10 things that decrease this, and you can have, I imagine you could define for each question what type of connection those are creating between the node that is in the question and the answers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be a really generative way to start rich conversations around a broad, you could have a broad system map question and then dive into nodes and generate the understanding and expertise from the network that's exploring that question. Which is, it's funny because I was thinking of it less as an input and more as something you could do to look at loops and action items. But you could actually generate some system maps with this.
Yeah, well, I'd say in many ways it's sort of, you can see it as like a facilitation augmentation tool, and that each module can be seen as having an input, an output, and some sort of what it does on the inside with the input. And then, yeah, as a facilitator, you could sort of, like Connor had done, sort of pre-design these prior to a workshop, all the modules you want laid out, and then basically just sort of start plugging and playing as you're sort of running the process, and you can orchestrate it on that level, I would say.
One thing that we didn't get to kind of show in running that process was that we switched from the contact type phone to the contact type Mattermost, but actually the contact type phone is interesting as well, because it kind of shows you how people can participate on different platforms all simultaneously. So I actually could have participated via my phone in the process as well, just via SMS text message, because I've programmed with a system that's capable of conducting it over text message. So the idea is, so far we have text message and we have Mattermost, but we would slowly but surely kind of prioritize and develop plugins for the predominant chat systems that would allow us to kind of hook into Facebook Messenger or Telegram, or also, I'm hopeful about the peer-to-peer platforms that are emerging to plug into a holochain-based chat application, or a secure scuttlebutt, or some of the P2P versions as well.
Can we do it again now that Joachim is here?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, sure.
Maybe do. I would love to know the different fields or types of mapping that everybody's interested in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can change up the question and rerun it. Yeah.
The other prompt that seeing Joachim enter that interested me was the intersection of this thing that he's created called talk time. So on these calls, we often all have ideas and we sort of want to be talking at the same time, and it's harder. But with a tool like this rapid sense-making framework, you could ask a prompt maybe to this group in a sort of meta way to reflect on the process we've just run, and sort of like, well, what did you think of that? And then everybody can answer at once, and we don't need to step on.
Connor,
be careful to not
will you
step on each
share your
other's
screen
toes.
again?
Mm-hmm, sure.
I wanted to just throw in something regarding the questions, something that else to come to mind. Some of you might know Sutra.co and Lorenz Sell, and he's been developing something called question journeys, which basically is just kind of sequential questions rolling out in sequence. So you answer the first one and then you get the next prompt and so forth. And I'm just thinking there could be something there kind of with this process of rapid sense making within a question journey, for example.
I'm going to change the question. Can you repeat the question you want to ask one more time for me, Christina?
What types or areas of mapping are you most interested in?
Right. So here you can see where I've written in the question. What types of mapping?
And if you want to participate, I think you'll have to do what we did earlier, Joachim, is go to, if you likely don't have the link yet in the chat.
Yeah, and it'll look like it's offline right now, but well, it'll come online in just a second.
Does everybody need to do it again, or are we all on if we've done it already?
You need to do it again. You need to sort of subscribe to this particular process.
Great.
Yeah, so that's this link. and then change your contact type to Mattermost. Use the chat.diglife.coop chat server, as long as you have that. Yeah.
Did you want to expand the number of participants, or is that just a minimum?
That's actually, that's not, that's false that it's 3. It's
great.
I think it's 10 right now, which I think is enough.
And it's also whoever opts in at this moment, right, for the time box period.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it's capped at 8. Is that wrong? Is that bad? Should we increase it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, we have 11 people here, so maybe I should increase it. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna stop it. Sorry, and restart. I'll just go up to 20 so that we're not just, or 11. Okay. Okay, now it's live again, and please redo it. So find your username here with the @ but don't use the @.
Is it the same link?
Yeah, same link. Okay, and we just wait. It's going to wait 3 minutes or until there's 11 participants. So. I'm trying to figure out how to share the answers that we got from the last question with everybody. It's not letting me put it into the chat, maybe because it's too big. I don't know. Rob, what do you think?
You could probably put it in the Mattermost chat.
Yeah.
As a snippet or something?
Yeah, just do the 3 backticks and then put it in the ecosystem mapping calls channel within Open Learning.
Okay, yeah. Great.
So that chunk of data can be seen as sort of like a module of its own, or maybe sort of like a piece of middleware, a very sort of inanimate piece of middleware, but it's still the same.
So it's just stopped. Or yeah, it's just moving on and actually kicking off the process. I see Joaquin, Mariette, Christina, Connor, Jerry, Joaquin, Love Evolve, Rich Experiences, Robert. So one thing that I know that it does is it doesn't always send everyone all the messages, which is a problem, but I know why that is. It's because of rate limits on the Mattermost API. So I'm still trying to figure out how to work around that. If you didn't receive a message, it should say you can contribute up to 10 responses. The process will stop automatically after 120 seconds or 2 minutes. So.
Did anybody not get it?
Yeah, I didn't get it. All I got was the prompt, but not the rules. Everybody needs to get the rules too.
The other thing for me last time, it didn't give me any sort of explicit message that this portion of the survey was done. So it just sort of, I wouldn't know when to stop. And when we ran some All Our Ideas surveys before, and some people got stuck not knowing that it'll just keep asking you to answer, to vote on in pairwise comparison, which options you prefer.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's just completed the process. The max time has been reached. Stopping now. Thanks for participating. Now, I do want to make it give like little warnings when it's close to finishing too. So I'm going to share this result with everybody too. This is really cool. Can you share this into the ecosystem mapping calls? So there's your data, Christina. Yeah, to your question, Jerry, that would have to be just sort of done manually right now. The formats are off. You can technically do like CSV imports or something into metamaps too.
Yeah.
But you need to format the data in a particular way, which would need some tweaking from this format that it's in here.
And that's another module, right? The conversion from one format to another. The
Yeah,
input,
exactly.
the input and the output.
Yeah.
Connor, would it be easy to edit the JSON quickly or not?
To edit it like just by hand?
Yeah, just by hand. If you can just put at the top that all of these are elements.
Mm-hmm.
And change where it says text, just say, like, do a find and replace and do label.
Actually, the better place to put these would likely be in our shared notebooks on CodeMD, and then we could sort of collaborate on them. And I'm assuming CodeMD has some sort of code-based markup that lets you paste this sort of thing into it.
Well, I'm really happy to be able to run this process with you all. It's really exciting and a privilege. And yeah, I'm seeing where there's issues, but also like where there's excitement. It's really fun.
Joachim, are you glad you came?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me over. So where do you go from here, Connor? More integrations or more functionality, or what's your thinking there?
Yeah, it's kind of a slow burn kind of process in terms of how I'm working on it. I'm hoping to be able to dedicate more time to it soon. But also it's very well documented. That's one of the things that I did a lot of like early work to do, is to make it really well documented. So, and even to provide templates for the modules. So that makes it easier for me to develop new modules, but also for other people to potentially develop new modules and different plugins and stuff like that. So it's a very extensible ecosystem, and it's very self-documented already, and it doesn't have any server costs either, because it's just kind of, it spins up a temporary process and then it shuts it down. So it's very like self-sufficient. Like it doesn't, it's not going to require much financial input or anything like that. Yeah, it feels very self-sufficient, and I'm trying to do these early tests to actually get kind of more really grounded feedback and that kind of thing on how much time even is worthwhile to put into it. Is it actually, does it have the type of potential and actually the real users or user communities that I'm imagining that it could have? And so this is, I have to do a couple layers of testing with people in real communities, both to work out some technical kinks, but also to sort of do more to clarify the value proposition that it has, and strategic starting points.
Could I ask a question or two? Is there, like, as part of the vision, or is there a point or a way that, let's say with Mattermost, that it could be used for this kind of like sort of, polling, heat polling in a way that is a little bit more durable or interesting or extensible, instead of just, the clicking 1, 2s, I approve, I have a smiley face, whatever, those types of standard things. And then the other question is, or the other comment is that I could see this being really interesting for creating a sort of sense-making trail on a map. So at this day, this was the consensus. At this day, this was the consensus. Same question, different day, and that would be an interesting way to map the development of people's relationship to the concept or idea. So those two things in particular were both a question and then the comment of what I really see and feel as, the second one being quite interesting.
Yeah, and to the first one, yeah, I think that the reason why I'm interested in developing these kinds of tools is because I don't think that we do nearly enough with in terms of the kinds of tools that can foster collectively intelligent like use of chat. Like, so much intelligence is kind of drains away the way that we use chat platforms and stuff like that. And so it's really about finding far more interesting and ways of using them. And yeah, there's these little polling tools and people use them in very simple ways. But it's kind of like, how can we develop our own practices as groups to be more sophisticated? And so the group has to be more sophisticated in its own way. The tool also has to match the sophistication of the group. So they need to evolve in parallel to actually be able to work smarter, better together, faster, more, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned earlier in the chat, and I made a mystical reference to a Quartz chat app. Quartz is the news service, so quartz.com is a pretty, qz.com I think is a pretty good news website. But if you go to the App Store, you'll see that they have two different apps. There's a kind of a regular app, and then there's a Quartz chat app. Try installing it and just try running through it, because it actually uses a bot as a conversational agent to get your news. It's a little too much for me, but then it sort of becomes a notification thing that's part of your environment. It's curious and interesting and really cleanly done. Like it's a high level of polish, heading in the direction I think you're talking, Connor. But I then uninstalled it because I didn't want that much chat with my news.
Is the Quartz chat app?
Yep.
That's cool. It's really interesting. Thanks.
Rob, that sounds like one for Roland to chime in on, maybe. Roland's a journalist in Belgium who's also pretty into tech meets journalism stuff. Anyway, some of you probably know him. I had a question, Rob. Rob showed us, I guess what's on the back end maybe is what you showed us, Rob, last week. There was something that was kind of like this map that you had, a kind of chat thing with the map. Is that the same as this or connected to this?
Well, that's the thing. This, like when Connor sort of said at the beginning, it's cross-platform, cross-protocol. It's not really like one big platform. It's modular. And so what was shown, Connor, was the Combo Islands, the sort of graphical, conversational graphical layout module, I guess you could call it, for sort of consuming a bunch of graph layout data, and then in the case we're envisioning it for conversation, but then laying that conversation to allow you to explore it and reply to things. So I don't know if there's time to demo that here, but that's sort of so yeah, sort of a brief description. I'm in the midst of I'm not a good yet video post-production artist, so in order to do the little tweaks we needed, Charles, it's I haven't put the video yet up on YouTube, but I'll sort of go in and timestamp the part that you're referring to and sort of link it back in some way so that others can see what you mean. We've already basically done a little demo, but yeah. One thing for others that weren't on or weren't, I don't know, I have sort of still been mapping. So I brought in all the tools that Connor had put on the GitHub page that are sort of in this realm of sort of potential modules within this system. We had used all our ideas a bit within the Open Learning Commons, and some of the things I wanted to link together was the federated wiki and generative sequences within pattern language and how that fits in here. So recent developments in federated wiki that I discovered just yesterday on the call. It's a very sort of, it has this thing almost like a runner, Connor, where the different cards could potentially represent these modules. And Ward Cunningham's now made it, well, they've recently made it so you can drag the cards and reorder them, which you couldn't do before, sort of drag and drop. But Ward Cunningham's now made it so that the order matters and the sort of what's to your left feeds into what's on your right. So in the sense, FedWiki is now a really nice sort of plug-in substrate that we might run rapid Sensemaking framework on top of or consider bringing in is something to put out there.
So from my point of view, I think anything that sort of improves the chat capability, integrates with that, I think it's really important. I think we're calling it now augmented chat, and I know John Kelton from the conversation community calls it programmable chat. So it's not only this rapid flowing stream of information that passes by and is gone, right? But you do want to capture or start capturing some of these what I call, right? So these are things trying to slow down and gather around, right? And can repeatedly come back to that and improve it or build on top of this, right? So that to me is really an important piece of, yes, we do live in these fast-flowing activity streams today, but we need to slow down. We need time to sort out what's actually happening in the stream without me going every day in and reading everything that I missed, right? But it needs to come back easily, right? That needs to be represented in different ways. So if you can augment the chat with these kind of integrations, that's great. That's making that tool a lot more useful in an asynchronous fashion, right? So I can go there whenever I want to. I also do see this as an option to integrate that with synchronous tools. Say this video chat here, to tell me, give me feedback on the current situation in our, conversation here, really, to say, hey, Jerry just said something important. Highlight that at a certain point in this video. Maybe it's recorded. Maybe we can come back to that. I've seen, Lauren is here too. Maybe you want to ping her and get her opinion on certain things, right? So a bot recognizes that kind of dynamic in this open conversation, right? And could even go deeper into AI and extracting some of the context. What are we talking about? What are the tensions really? And surface that back to the team. So to me, this creates really important feedback loops, right? Almost, if you look at second-order cybernetics, is something you're working inside the stream, but also you want to take a look outside it and get some meta feedback on what's currently going on in the conversation. Robert has been doing so much work on this meta view of things, right? Stepping out of the stream and really thinking what is happening here. And I think in that meta view, that's where a lot of the sense making is happening, right? But it's difficult for people, to jump from this active, in the stream conversation out of the stream, to a slower meta level to understand what is happening there. So that's an interesting space really to explore, and the tool sets really can create in that in ways to support this kind of conversation, these meta conversations, right? I'll stop here.
I was just taking notes. It was great thoughts.
I'm interested. Maybe Joachim, I'll say hi. We haven't really met directly before, so I'm glad to meet you. And I was just curious if it's appropriate just to say something about talk time, which I've only heard about but haven't really looked at. It seems relevant, maybe, if no one else minds.
Sure. I can give you a quick screenshot if you're interested in, and to get you a better idea of what this is.
Is that fine for everyone? Because I don't know if I'm derailing. I don't want to do that.
Sounds good. Okay, let me quickly bind it here.
Yeah, and while Joaquin's looking, I added game shifting onto our board, and in some sense, Talk Time is almost like a game shifting game board, or at least the makings of it. So yeah, there's some cool synergies here.
Great. Okay, so let me share my screen here. Oh, it's funny, it's Jerry is on board here, so you will see something familiar in a second. So this is Talk Time. You log in by your Mattermost user name, and you're presented with a screen that says on the left side are current participants in the conversation. This is sort of a synchronous tool to support an active conversation, right? To give you I talked about this feedback loop. What is it that's currently happening inside a conversation? And here's, from the previous conversation I was using at this URL, you see the previous participants and my name here. So the whole idea is, I can go in here and indicate I want to say something, and then you create a queue to say, hey, I've done some things. Here's Robert, right? And I like to raise my hand and then continue and then talk about the topic. So you hand over, some of these administrative tasks inside an active conversations are handed over by this tool. But more importantly, there's a center of focus here where you can actually see certain topics coming up inside a conversation, and you can have everyone doing the conversation point to that and then actively sort of augment the social objects inside the conversation. So this is an example here. We had used that for the Dig Live general meeting. This is a CodeMD notepad here. Hey, there's Lauren. And took some notes during the meeting, right? So here's one way to say actively participate and write about these notes. But this can be extended into all kinds of areas, right? You can say, okay, let's bring in some graphics here, right? Since this is a shareable graphic, in this case it's a Google Drawing thing, anybody on the call can now go in there and actually modify the content. So this is not only screen sharing here, this is more about actively participating in the conversation, right, through the tools. And we could put in anything we want here. It could be metamaps, Robert's metamaps, put it in here. And the map he just created for our conversation, right, that could be co-created if you have access to the same map. And then build that while the conversation is going on, right? You can continue this with other tools. So here, since Jerry's on the call here, we can actually ask Jerry's brain here on certain topics, right? Even while Jerry's not on the call. So let's say there's some stuff we want to know about, I don't know, Kanban, for example, right? So you can see, okay, there's a lot of stuff about Kanban in Jerry's brain. Let's bring that up. And then sort of augment the conversation with, okay, we already know a couple of things. Jerry knows a lot of things. Maybe we can relate our conversations to the knowledge he already brings to the table, right? Whether he's in the conversation or not. So that's just, aspects of how do you bring this stuff in real time, and also give feedback on, okay, who has said something, who's here. If you're on a mobile phone, it's hard to actually jump into the conversation. So that kind of tool supports that kind of remote participation when don't know exactly what, when is your jump in point and when can you come into the conversation. So I'll stop here. I don't want to take up too much time with this. So it gives you an idea, this sort of real-time, augmenting real-time conversations, video conference and calls.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I think we sort of at our mutual intersection have a lot of really cool prototypes already made, and sort of in an abstract way, what this RSF thing is pointing towards is sort of like, okay, now let's start sort of doing a bit of integration and play at that level. So another thing that Connor didn't demo, this same metamapper bot, rather than coming to you as a direct message, it can also sit in the channel. So I think in some ways the integration between our Zoom chat and the dedicated back channel, whether that's on Talk Time as like a portal type overlay, or wherever, that we would be chatting in the Mattermost, because then the bot is sort of in that channel, and it's I don't know if things are running, but Connor might describe it better. Ideally, we would demo, because there's already some working prototypes there where basically you can, using reactions, react to messages as a form of giving feedback to the bot who's listening in the channel, and can be pulling those messages as nodes onto the map, and all kinds of things that we've already, well, mostly Connor has already made a reality.
Well, you described it well, and yeah, I don't think we can quite demo it right now, but another day, like, it's cool.
Something I just thinking a lot about, and Rob knows, is Keybase, and sort of courtesy Johnny Dabowski and some others sort of got me in there. And it seems pretty cool, and I'm just wondering if anybody knows, or just to flag that for, for you guys in particular, this kind of integrations with Keybase, I think would be great as well.
There's a chat system in there nowadays, isn't there? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, Connor, for your context, I'm not sure if you've played with it much, but it's one of the better sort of ways of linking together all of your online identities in this sort of double linked way that we've talked about before. And sort of the other thing that's interesting with Keybase is it has its own Git system. So I know with Convo Islands, that's all running on top of just a simple Git system where, anyways, just to sort of flag that for you.
One thing I'd like to say is that between both of these tools, one of the things that comes up for me is, I think, sort of what maybe Charles was alluding to earlier a little bit, which is for people who would be part of the conversation, but who are not actually part of the individual conversation, ways to disseminate some of this curatorial work as a news feed, whether it's some sort of like the QZ thing that you were referencing originally, Jerry, because that's something we've talked about before, like, Twitch type of things, and things that allow people to sort of plug in into these conversations in an integrated way, even if they're not invited participants, but you have levels of privacy and levels of interaction that they can come into. And so that's a very sort of far off integration, I imagine, but that level of conversation and curatorial power and then dissemination is also key, because one of the things I think that we know is that not only are we working on what we're working on, but we're working on something within a much broader movement and shift in perspective. And there are a lot of people who could benefit from being privy to the way that this is developing as a form of invitation. So, like it.
That's a great point. There's one tool that was mentioned in the list of the rapid sensemaking frameworks, kind of like references, that's called Assemble, which I think does a great job of. And there's another one actually that you've mentioned, Robert. What was the other one about creating summaries?
Oh, Wickham.
Wickham, right. That's a really interesting tool for summarizing articles and comment threads and all kinds of things too, and that comes to mind. And
you mentioned Wickham, and then also in one of the lists on the webpage was listed Polis, and there's a whole mashup with V Taiwan, Audrey Tang, and Gov0.
Yeah.
All this stuff. I guess you're plugged into that as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, I looked really closely at Polis because I was like just totally, taken with the approach that they had. And the cool thing is that fundamental to what they developed as an approach is just that it's an approach. The technology itself is not necessarily, or the sort of the way that the conversation is structured is not a complex, it's not such a complex pattern, it's just a unique pattern, and it's one that they sort of proved had a certain kind of value. And it's not that easy to sort of translate into other virtual spaces too, and to have groups benefit from the kind of collective intelligence that can arise from in short, for people, the interesting thing about a polis-based conversation is that actually, before you can add add new perspectives to the conversation, I put it in quotes because it's kind of a variation. It's not really just a thread of comments. It's more like a collection of statements that represent perspectives on a particular issue. Is that before you can add a new one, you have to go through and click something that kind of indicates whether you agree or disagree, or whether you just pass on a particular thing, don't have a comment. And then so you go through everything that's previously been said. And the idea is not to make it super long. Like, there should only be 30 to 40 maybe statements, so it doesn't necessarily take you that long to get through them all. And then you can add something that you think is missing. But otherwise, your perspective is already maybe captured through all of the things that you've said that you kind of agree with. So it gives a group a really rich set of insights on how people feel about a particular issue and which kind of opinion groups form out of that.
I have to go here in a couple minutes, but I want to do a quick screen share because I tweaked the JSON, and here's our answers of all the different types of maps.
Cool.
So if we
could very easily automate that.
Well, I'm wondering, like, if you click on, I love competitive intelligence. That's great. So if you clicked on one kind, could you get multiple properties for an element with a question, I guess is my question, because then you could say, for discussing this, here's a chat space to do it. So you would need to answer competitive intelligence and then add, like, here's where to discuss about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you want to expand on the metadata for a particular element?
Answer, yeah. And maybe that's a second process around that element.
Right, it's a second process. It's like an iterative, probably an iterative thing, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then we could end up with something across the Open Learning Commons of, like, here are the places where different types of conversations are happening around these different topics.
Isn't this what Jean Bellinger was talking about, using the Kumu comments feature?
You could do it in Kumu, but that's, for this group, is probably not. I mean, everybody has to have a Kumu account. It's proprietary software, blah, blah, blah. It kind of pulls us more into that proprietary world. And I think a lot of the Dig Life conversations want to stay. I'm wondering if that couldn't just be like, here's the chat channel across the Dig Life servers where I'm discussing this, as long as they're a public, as long as the conversations are happening in a team that everybody's in, and you had that, or you could do whatever chat room you wanted, right? It's just like, here's where, or you could do a doc or a notepad that is the conversation about that thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you.
So you just did some manual editing of the file, yeah? Yeah,
I just use a text editor and like, fiddled with it until it behaved properly. It wouldn't be that hard to set up a process to convert to a Kumu-friendly thing. But I'm really interested in the iterative, here's the stuff about the thing that I just talked about. Or where the ongoing conversations were, because that allows it to become kind of like the portal. Here is the overlay of all the different things, not
Right,
everybody
yeah.
everybody come onto my platform, which is the one platform to rule them all.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
like-
Connor has context for the portal because you haven't joined the collective yet, right? Have you seen it? Okay, well then yes, you're missing context there.
So yeah, I like that, Christina. I know about, you further contextualize the metadata that came out of this conversation, right? And to me, I love to see something like this sort of on a card-based interface, and then you can sort of pull the metadata into the cards, and then from there you can begin to sort of rearrange stuff and let me show you maybe real quick how it looks like in the DigLive portal. If you have certain cards, right? So here's what we have. We call them nodes or notepads, right? So each card represents a node, and there's metadata associated with each node, right? So you have some tags that you can assign to that, a title and some other metadata. But I can see there's a connection between what you just captured in the chat stream, right? Can flow directly as a JSON file then into new cards that are created on the fly. And then you can begin to get into, Rob laid that out as a generative process. So from there you can drill down deeper into the topic, right? And you can also, directly open this thing and then of course write about it or give more context if you want to do that. But then at another level here, right? So this is now not necessarily, this is no longer metadata, this is now content about what is happening, rather than the context. You see a level up here, and the relationship between the different topics that we just surfaced, right? So each one representing maybe a card that can then be further developed, or put into the context of the generative sequences, where you begin to sort of assign a status to these cards, or a stage, really. Where are we with this? Is it a call for action? Is it a call for clarity? Now, this is an example here of a governance process using a card-based interface. But that could then happen to this topic, right? So be that competitive intelligence or something else, we can say, okay, where are we with this? Do we need more clarity on this? Do we need an update? Are we at a stage where you have to make a decision, really, right, about what is happening next here, right? And then go into some kind of a call for objection. So I can see there are some good ways to actually interface with the raw data that's coming in from a stream, and put that on a graphical interface, and then open it up for participation, for even other people who haven't been there or who are not in that channel, right? Who can then see these cards in other domains and other areas. Well, I'll stop here.
Well, so are we calling it a wrap?
I think so, unless anyone else, yeah. Sorry to cut you off, Michael.
I was thinking more of an opening than a wrap.
The beginning is the end. Is the beginning.
Yeah, great to see everyone. Good to meet some new people that I hadn't had a chance to connect with.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Charles. I've heard about you from Robert for quite a while too.
I look forward to more. Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
Very glad to see what you're doing. And just I'm a total broken record on this subject, but now I can ask you directly. Please, can you at some point, if and when you rebuild metamaps, let's say, put the mind mapping feature in there, not just the concept mapping. Like some hierarchy of toggle switch, please. That would be so nice. It's my vote. So anyway, cool.
Okay, see you folks.
Next time. Bye-bye.